Hello, all you skibbies. This is Great Answer, and I am coming back to you with part 2 of our Information Security for Kinksters special edition of Great Answers podcast. Rigger J commented that perhaps the new name used to be all about the rope, and now it's about apparently geeky stuff. But I can tell you that we do keep this, especially the second part, very directed towards specific information security for kinky people, because we try and identify some special risks. Again, this is the edited second half. It's got shortened this podcast to just about an hour if you include the stuff I'm talking about now. And the part 1 is about an hour also, and that's edited down from about 2 hours and 15 minutes of raw content. And I should add, it's not that I edited out the uhs and ums and gasping of my sick voice and things like that, because I was sick when we were recording this. But actually, well, I do some of that. But the main part is that I took out a lot of the things that are a little more technical. It's not that they aren't fun to listen to, because I enjoyed listening to them, and certainly after more than 2 hours of talking, he and I could have kept on talking for a long time, but it's not necessarily relevant for everyone. So for the people that were not needing to have that kind of level of depth, it's there. If you want to have that level of depth, let me tell you how you can. I talk about my Patreon page quite often, and most of the time when I'm talking about it, I'm talking about things that my patrons get that other people don't. However, thanks to the help of my patrons, I've been able to make this a public, accessible podcast, mainly because I think it's important. And you can go to patreon.com/posts/8055083. Or just go to patreon.com/greatanswer and click on the posts section, and you will see the complete download for the complete interview. And if you want to get that, listen to all 2 hours and 15 minutes of unedited glory, you are welcome to do so. In fact, you'll probably get some great information. But in the meantime, this is the shorter version for the people that don't want to quite get that much fitted for their tinfoil hats. Also, I have gotten some really good responses from the very first one, and I have increased the webpage on my greatanswer.com, so we have some other information as well. And that link is greatanswer.com/infosec1. Infosec is INFOSEC1. And if you go there, you can get links to the articles we talk about, several of the books we talked about, and a long list of additional feedback and tips from Pendorbound. I have another person who has been helping me out a lot named Panina, who I got in touch with via Hedwig. Hi, Hedwig. And we are also talking a lot, and I should have some more resources from them soon as well. So, lots and lots of stuff coming in, and I'm not going to talk much beyond this because I just want to get into the podcast. But this podcast also is supported by twistedmonk.com. Now, I mentioned that Twisted Monk is going to be the person who is doing things in terms of, he's providing the rope that I'm using for my daughter's wedding, which I'm not tying up my daughter. Don't let your mind go there. I'm just providing some decorations. But I will say that I am honored to be using it because he has been a positive force in my life ever since before we met, actually, when he first started supporting this podcast. God, many, many years ago, 2005. So I want to give a lot of thanks to Twisted Monk for his support, and also suggest that you, if you can get anything out of this, at the very least, drop him a line, send him a tweet. Twisted Monk is his Twitter name, and just say thanks for supporting Great Answers podcast because, hey, it does some good. That's because he does some good. So without further ado, here you have part 2 of my interview with Johnny Tornado, InfoSec security specialist on information security for Kinksters. What should we do then? I mean, do we turn off our phones? Do we have to go back to I can't ever take out my cell phone at an event? Do we get a burner phone? What should we do?
Well, so it depends on, what your individual level of risk, what you're willing to do. I've considered actually getting a burner number for my phone.
Well, but wait a minute. I thought about that. If I use that app that's called Burner on my iPhone, it'll have a different telephone number, but won't I have the same serial number for my phone?
Oh, absolutely. This won't help with the MC problem.
Gotcha. Okay. You want to make sure I understood that right.
And I kid you not, flying to DEF CON one year, Tales from Joe's Real Life, I heard the two gentlemen behind me on the plane talking about how they had just gone to the mall, bought a mall gift card in cash, walked with the gift card into the Best Buy, bought a burner phone, walked to the computer display in the Best Buy, activated the phone on the Best Buy computer, then turned the phone off, took the battery out, and went to the airport. So that they had a completely untraceable phone, well, notionally completely untraceable phone, that had never had their name on it, right? They didn't pay with a credit card. They didn't use their own computer. They didn't do it from their house. And this is the thing that, like, hackers get into doing. What I will tell you is they probably didn't make sure that they didn't walk past a camera before they did that. And the FBI has been known, if they know a thing happened at a time, they will go find every camera that physically could have seen that, gone to the operator of that camera, given them a warrant, and gone, hi, we want all the data from that camera for this day. So it's really hard to get away from that. The reason I'm interested in using a burner number personally is because I'm one of those people who's like, oh, hey, look, Facebook just recommended somebody I met at an event as a friend on my vanilla account that has my name and my face and all those kinds of things. And I think a way that happens a lot, right? Everybody likes to text and get messages like, hey, we're going out for food. Hey, do you want to play? Even if I don't let Facebook see my contacts, if you let Facebook see your contacts and I'm in there with my phone number,
yep,
Facebook's going to tell you, hey, there's Joe. You should talk to him. Because to Facebook, they're helping, right? You want to find your friends.
Right.
We had this whole conversation on Twitter the other day about being helpy.
Yeah. Somebody had their ex show up as a recommendation as a friend, and they had gone to extreme lengths to make sure that there was nothing linking their current Facebook account with their ex at that time. And yet Facebook found out because it was trying to help. Is that kind of one of the issues we run into at events? I mean, should we be using Facebook or Google Chat or, Snapchat? Are we being silly to be using these things at events, or is there something better we should be using?
So I don't, it depends, again, what your personal risk level is and how much inconvenience you're willing to deal with. Maybe you don't want to log into FetLife through the VPN on your cell phone inside a hotel during an event to send FET mail to somebody else.
Wait. Are you saying that's not a good thing, or that's
like a super secure way to do business? It's also really inconvenient, right? It's much easier to pop open an iMessage and send you one.
Gotcha. Okay.
The other problem we have, and no offense to you, you're really out, right? So if I look at your Facebook, you probably, follow some public events on Facebook.
Yes.
I'm not, but I have people in my leather family or friends who are super out in their lives. And so posts that they're going to the Eagle to go see, the Mr. Maryland Leather contest, for example. That's awesome. I don't want to explain what Mr. Maryland Leather is to my nephew, who's also my Facebook friend.
Yes.
Or his very conservative religious parents, who are my cousins. So I wouldn't want to use Facebook. I actually have a whole separate Facebook account for Kink that never touches my phone. To try to keep those as separate as I can. I have not found a good mechanism to separate Facebook mobile accounts, so I'm not going to let Facebook do that. I have considered getting a burner phone. The problem is I already spend enough on my iPhone. I don't really want a whole separate burner phone. So the burner phone app is really appealing to me, where I could have I used to use Google Voice for this, right? I would give out a phone number that would ring on my phone. I could receive text messages, voicemails, whatever. It just wasn't really my phone number.
Right.
And if I had to throw it away, I did. Great, really convenient, and gives you, again, a little bit of that ability, as we define using the Dan Gear definition, the ability to effectively misrepresent yourself.
Rigger J, I think it was Rigger J or Russ, Twisted View, had talked about, if the issue is, like you say, the accounts are all connected and stuff like that, and I'm going to be crossing the border, and I'm worried that Border Patrol is going to get this list, get the list of people. The idea was to bring along not quite a burner laptop, but a laptop that was basically innocent. I will call it a pristine laptop, as in, it has me playing Candy Crush, it has me following Nickelback on Facebook, and it's got some really good pro-Trump whatever posters on the background, whatever.
Was too much, but oh my god!
And it just it's just the completely innocuous kind of a thing. Okay, and here in my mind, when they said that, I'm thinking yes, and meanwhile I will have my USB cufflinks, and on that USB cufflink I will have my tiny little USB drive that has Tails on it, Tails, which is a browser designed for to leave no trace on the computer and things like that. And you can make them so they have persistent memory, which I've almost figured out how to do. But anyway, you can, that, and what happens is I go past the border, they look at my laptop, oh, there's nothing there interesting. Go ahead, Mr. Miller, that's fine. I go in, I stick in my thumb drive and boot up from the thumb drive, and I have my wicked, evil, dirty desktop, everything, that I want to do. And then I read the New York Times, which talked about how ISIS recruits terrorists, and it almost exactly describes that process of using Tails, and how the government, could tell that people had used Tails, but they couldn't tell what had happened because it left no trace. And I'm like, oh, so basically if they find out that I'm using Tails, I am automatically looking just like a terrorist. So
yeah, so you're looking like a terrorist or a hacker. And I will tell you that at some levels of the federal government,
there's no difference.
Different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's it's a really interesting challenge. Years ago, there was a program called TrueCrypt that was created to do whole disk encryption before Apple had their sort of file vault, or Microsoft had BitLocker. The idea being, if you did live in an oppressive regime, you could give up a password to basically a vanilla account, a clean version of the computer that you hadn't done anything bad in. And then when the secret police gave you your laptop back and let you go, you could access that hidden volume with the second password that nobody knows about.
Gotcha.
And get your incriminating data back. So now there's actually a new program called Veracrypt, Veracrypt. Does exactly the same thing. It's an open source fork of TrueCrypt. There's a little bit of an ethical question in the open source community because the TrueCrypt creators didn't really suggest that was okay. Like, oh yeah, take all our code and go fork it after we're done. That being said, there's still a need for this code to exist. There's a need for this code to work. Journalists, kinksters.
I was just going to say, not just a hacker or a terrorist, but also you might look like these days a journalist, an activist, or a somebody who is a targeted population.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I were a journalist, I would be terrified, and if I were a source for a journalist, I would be telling that journalist how they will and will not handle my data, and that's after I've done all of my good OPSEC, which comes as a DoD term, a military term. It stands for operational security. Mm-hmm. And so OPSEC isn't just the sort of technical countermeasures of like, hey, I'm going to make sure that my password is strong and I'm using an up-to-date version of the program and all that kind of thing. It's also ideas like, hey, you know what? If I don't want people to know what my real name is, maybe I'm not going to take a picture that might have my name in the background. Lots of funny stories on Facebook about cops finding like drug dealers because they took a picture of a marijuana plant sitting on top of their table, and under the plant was their mail. And the cops went, hey, let's zoom in on that part. Hey, we know where that address is.
Gotcha.
So that's bad OPSEC. Or, I don't want to get outed. So Rigger J is a great example, and I actually like what he did. His Facebook account doesn't have a picture of his face. You can't see if it's a picture of his cat. He'll tell you that. And the idea is if somehow in the suggested friends Jay's real name were to pop up, Jay's real Facebook account is there, you'll go, oh, it's a cat's butt. Like, I don't know anybody who's actually a cat.
That's the fake one. His real face looks nothing like a cat's butt.
But the idea, right, is there's this sort of strong, that's a smart OPSEC maneuver. Yeah. That being said, if you suddenly go out to Facebook and change all your pictures and, take your pictures off FET, for those of you who have face pictures on FET, it might look a little weird, but it's a good OPSEC choice.
Facial recognition is this. I mean, I actually spent some time today doing new research trying to find good counters to facial recognition surveillance, because that's another issue at events. You can say, oh no, that wasn't me. But if there's cameras around, and there's cameras everywhere, and they can connect your face to the name right there. And unfortunately, as best I could find on the internet, was that the short of being lucky and wearing a hat or a hoodie or a mask, there really isn't a good way other than, as Rigger J did, just don't be in front of the camera.
And that's really so when I started going to events pretty heavily 5 or 6 years ago, I'm not going to say how long I've been in kink because I don't need to feel that old. But I started going to events that had photo policies, because I'm so old. I remember when events had no phone policies and literally, had a kinetic testing program. So if we caught you with your phone, didn't matter if we saw you take a picture or not, your phone would go outside. We'd put it under this handy cinder block that we keep there, and then we'd hit it with a sledgehammer.
Yep.
Right.
I remember those days as well.
Right. Today, I find any place that has a no phone policy is really encouraging you to break the rule, because, even events I've been to that have quote unquote no phones in the place-based policies, everybody's got it in their bag. Yep. They've got it in their back pocket. So I think no phone policies are naive at this point, but it's really hard to keep your face out of photos. And I think Ropecraft, right, you guys just sort of strengthened your photo consent policy. Right.
Yeah, we changed that because we figured, even though people did sign and say that, if we consented to have pictures taken, we let you use them for marketing, we realized that when they signed that, a lot of people did not think that the, what did you call them, spray tan Caligula was going to be coming around. And so they might have changed their mind about being as out. And that's totally understandable. For reasons we've already been talking about. So, we decided we want to have explicit and enthusiastic consent to letting us use their photo. And if they don't want their photo taken, they can also, actually, there's a good place to just say, photos@ropecraft.net is the email to send. If you absolutely do want your pictures used, or you absolutely don't want your pictures used, send a message to them, and they will take care of it. We have a crack team waiting to take care of that.
So I think it's awesome that you guys have that policy, but I remember the first time I was in service to somebody and I went to an event with her, and she watched me fill out the photo consent form, and she goes, you used to not fill that out. Are you sure? And I was like, well, actually, yeah, I did a lot of thinking about this. And this is a hill basically I'm willing to die on. Like, if this gets me fired, I'm willing to deal with the repercussions of that. If this gets my family to disown me, I'm willing to deal with the repercussions of that. So I sort of made a very sober choice about that. I think a lot of people are like, oh, photos are fun. I want to see myself.
Right.
Probably when I was younger, I would have made that choice. But, as an older and much more jaded human being, I did a lot of thinking about it and said, is this something I'm really willing to have my name forever etched upon? And I said, yeah, I'm willing to do that because I want it to be normal and I want it to be okay. And that means that I have to be willing to do that.
It's very courageous of you. I actually, can we, that's something that I'm not sure if it falls outside of your expertise, but it's my understanding that the biggest danger of the idea is, the photo is going to be used against me to blackmail me or something like that. The vast majority, and I mean like as in the 90th percentile, of blackmail or photos getting out and causing damage are caused by people who know you and who know exactly how to hurt you, as opposed to some random stranger posting your image, on some board.
I would say certainly, right, if you're an elected official, you have a much higher profile, right? In my case, right, the worst I was going to get was my coworker's going to be like, oh, so like that 50 Shades stuff?
Yeah.
Like you do that?
In some ways that has made it easier, hasn't it?
Right? Although I will tell you, right, it was really fun to be a covert kinkster in the office in those days, because
yes,
the folks who were reading it go, "Oh my God, did you read this?" And I'm like, "No, I was at an event all weekend." Oh wait, can't say that. But yeah, so it depends on what risk level. I happen to know someone who is a practicing lifestyle top, lived with her slave, and got in a really long, ugly custody battle with a previous partner over their child.
Mm-hmm. And I know people like that too.
Right. Ended up not getting blackmailed, but like their partner was trying to keep the kid away from them and was submitting evidence of them going to kink events to the judge saying, look, she's unfit.
Yep. Or poly, they'll bring that up too.
Right. So, and unfortunately, that's not normal in our society yet. So the judge is inclined, right? The court tends to be conservative even when it's a liberal judge. So you tend to see that work.
Well, and I can give you another example of that. There is, and I'm not going to make their lives worse by giving names, but there's a prominent leather couple that were very active in the women's leather community that because one of them had a university position and spoke out against Trump in their class, she and her partner were publicly outed, publicly shamed, and ended up having to relocate and find new jobs. And they dropped out of the kink scene as well. And this is relatively recently as well. So, I mean, it is a real danger, even when you are mostly out and you think you're in a liberal place. I mean, that's part of the... When people smell blood in the water, they really want a scandal, and they can go after you. So I'm hoping that all of my listeners are realizing that just having this podcast on your phone puts you into a target demographic. To some extent.
If you go through my DVD collection and you find The Secretary on there, not as it turns out like a major blockbuster that lots of people saw. If you see that in Exit to Eden on my DVD shelf, you're going to be like, it's kind of an interesting theme going on over there, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, right. You kind of put yourself in this sort of interesting position. And again, we could talk about OPSEC, right? Maybe strong OPSEC is I don't I have a separate area where I keep those kinds of DVDs that could do that. Mm-hmm. When I talk about OPSEC, I use multiple browsers. So literally no cookies, no trace of the fact that I logged into FetLife is going to be in 3 of my other browsers. The one browser that I'm logged into FetLife will have it. The other 3 literally don't have that evidence in them. It was never there. I go all the way to, I don't look at stuff on Amazon from my signed in Amazon Prime account browser. I don't Google search everything under the same Google account. So that I have a kink Gmail account and I have a vanilla Gmail account. Google will associate, right, freely for you all the stuff that you do when you're logged into Google. And that includes your YouTube views, right? So if you're watching Shibari videos, Google knows who you are. Thanks a bunch. What you Google gets recorded, right? So if you type in how to tie a TK. And so I think one of the ways that people get unfortunately outed, right, at least in a big data kind of sense of the word, is you don't ever think about clicking on a link for an Amazon product, right? You want to see how great other people thought the cordless Hitachi was. The fact is, if you're signed into your Amazon account under your real name, Amazon now knows, hey, Gray was looking at cordless Hitachis. Or if you Google it, right? Google knows, hey, Gray Googled cordless Hitachi.
Which is why when I was doing my research on the surveillance avoidance techniques, I was using Tor.
So that's right. That's a very real OPSEC step I take every day all the time. Probably 5 times a day. If you were sitting in front of my computer, you would hear a loud sigh of me going, this browser can't know that. Don't type that in. Delete, delete, delete. Okay, you didn't hit enter. It's fine. It didn't go anywhere. Okay, go to the other browser. Get the other window. Start the VM that has that data in it. I use a lot of virtual machines. So when I say VM, it stands for virtual machine. And it's just a way of running another operating system inside your currently running operating system. But it gives you a little bit of deniability, standoff distance. There are free solutions for that. The big free one is called VirtualBox. I think Mac, you have Parallels. I'm not as familiar with that.
Yep, Parallels and Boot Camp.
I think there's also a Mac version of VirtualBox. Mm-hmm. There's some solutions on Linux, and then there's both VirtualBox for Windows and some paid solutions, Hyper-V if you're in the server world, or it's called VMware Workstation from the VMware company.
So, folks who are listening, if you think we've gone like way too deep into things, I can tell you that having been researching this on my own as someone who was never, I was a designer and a dancer. I was never a programmer, and I've been dipping my toe into this, and we have barely touched the surface of the stuff that I've looked into, and I've barely looked into it. So there's so much more that can go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it got to a point, when I was struggling to try and get my laptop to boot off of a USB Linux distribution and things like that, that I suddenly realized, well, this is actually in the crypto key party manual. It's a quote from a person who said, there comes a point when we have to look at the fact that our trying to be secret about things is keeping us from doing the things that we're trying to keep secret. And if you do that, then the things that you're worried about, the people you're worried about finding out, they've won. If they can scare you too much to do it, then they've won. So at a certain point, we have to step back and go, okay, I am not going to carry around a top secret hidden USB key with tails on it to go through airport security. That's just silly. But I can take some solid steps. Now, some of them I already knew about, like the encrypting the phone. Although using an alphanumeric password would probably be even more secure. Multiple browsers. That sounds like one that's useful. And virtual boxes. What kind of things can a consumer do to try and let's not, again, we're not trying to beat the nation state, but just to sort of reduce their exposure or increase their deniability?
So multiple email accounts. And I still meet people who don't have like a Kink account and a vanilla account, right? Oh, everything just goes to mylittle.pony@hotmail.com. No, that's not my real email address. Please don't email whoever that is. But lots of people, right, kind of, especially I think the younger Kinkster crowd, right, like had a freebie account. You can tell that I'm old because Hotmail is what I used. I don't think anybody uses Hotmail anymore. But you kind of drag this account around, and it gets a lot of use in multiple places. And I will tell you, I used Gmail for so long that I'm back in the day when Gmail had invites. Mm-hmm. I cross-contaminated one of my accounts by sending an invite to a vanilla friend. And so Google automatically made me his first contact under an account that I didn't want him to know existed. OPSEC fail on my part. So strong separation between those accounts. Consider... I'm sorry?
Including email. It's something we haven't, and I realize we could talk for another hour about this, but PGP or GPG is a big buzzword among email. I actually, as I fell into this rabbit hole, got a Proton Mail account, which is a version of using encrypted email. Is that something that people should worry about looking at or not? It gets complicated.
Is a really good answer. It gets really complicated. So PGP, pretty good privacy. GPG is the open source equivalent GNU Privacy Guard. See, look, I can expand acronyms if I remember to do it. Phil Zimmerman is the guy who created PGP back in 1991, I think it was. PGP suffers really, really badly from the usability being awful.
Yeah. Even something like Proton Mail, which isn't bad for usability, I run into annoying aspects of it. Yeah.
So Proton Mail is a really good solution, and it depends a little. Again, do you want to beat somebody being nosy that you work with or in your family? Do you want to beat the cops, or do you want to beat the nation state? If you want to beat a nation state, you're going to be manually doing all your own GPG. You're going to store your keys offline. You're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. Not very fun. And you're going to spend a lot of time doing it. Mm-hmm. And if you make a mistake, the nation state wins. That's the other problem with any group that has $1 million to chase you. They can literally pay someone to watch you all the time and wait for you to make a mistake.
Right.
So that's why I kind of say for most people that really shouldn't be the threat model,
right?
Because you can't.
It's the idea of reducing exposure, probably then.
Yeah, absolutely. So so consider using a VPN. If you don't want me to associate all your accounts, right? Your Instagram, your Twitter, your FetLife, maybe don't use the same handle in all the same places.
But I have to build my personal brand.
Well, so you mentioned, at the start of the call, bona fides, right? Like, I sent you my resume because, one, I trust you to know my real name. Two, my real name won't get you anywhere. If you Google that, good luck. I'm not in the first 4 pages. I'm not in the 5th page either. Don't think I screwed that up. But you have this bona fides problem, especially in the kink scene, right? If I move to a new town and I say, hi, I'm Joe Cool. I've been in kink for years, but there's a digit in the tens place. Let's put it that way. They go, well, that's great. Why should I trust you? And I go, well, here's my FetLife account. Here's my Twitter account, right? Look, I talked to Great Answer. I must be like real kink. The problem with that, right, is it's easy to follow me around. So consider, yes, it's nice to have a long history because your bona fides are very easy and immediate to set up. The downside is it's really easy for somebody to find all of your accounts.
Oh, and just to put on another hat real quick, the problem with using a different one in a new situation is that if you don't have those bona fides, then, or as we say like here in the Midwest, bona fides, if you don't have those, then you look like, oh, you're somebody who maybe was banned from a group and now you're trying to start over. It's, again, one of those profile things. Oh, look, he has a brand new FetLife account and a brand new thing like that. Well, yeah, it could be privacy, but it could also be that he was, banned from another group and doesn't want us to be able to research him. Right.
And that's a real problem in the kink community. And it's a really hard problem to solve. I don't have really good answers to that. Hi, welcome to InfoSec Fatalism. We just say everything's wrong and then go home.
Yeah. Sounds like consent.
Use different email accounts. Consider where you log into that email account, right? Again, you have no expectation of privacy at work or on your employer's device. So, think about that if you're using your company cell phone and you're logging into your kinky Gmail account. Definitely use a strong password, encrypt your phone. My phone also has an automatic lockout. It's very, very short. It's 1 or 2 minutes. I forget what the rules are. Mm-hmm. You're paranoid when your employer goes to put their mobile device management solution on it, and the IT guy goes, "Oh, by the way, your screen account, your lockout's going to change, your password's going to change." And then he goes, "Actually, your settings are already better than ours." Yeah, I know. I have a problem.
Yeah.
So, consider a very short timeout. Consider not using all of your accounts on one phone. Because every time a company, whether that's Snapchat or Twitter or any of those, say like, oh, we don't harvest that data, sometimes it turns out they do.
Right. That's actually why we stopped using Slack for our Ropecraft meetings. Love Slack a lot, but we could not find anywhere that assured us that they would have we had any reasonable expectation of privacy. So we moved to Wire, which is an encrypted similar chat kind of thing, but that one does, blatantly say, at least, we are doing this on purpose to make sure that your data does not get bred by there. So,
yeah. So, and I think being aware, sort of trying to consume a little bit of information security news, a little bit of law enforcement awareness. That doesn't necessarily mean you go to The Intercept and read all the Snowden docs or you read everything on WikiLeaks. But maybe you read Wired a little bit or Ars Technica, ARS.
I would recommend people at least watch the movie Snowden, regardless of their politics or whether they think he was right or wrong to take this stuff. Just seeing what was capable, and here's the thing. I mean, yes, it is a movie, it is a dramatization, but it is actually backed up by documentation in a lot of places. If anything, I think it understates it in the movie. The ability of people to know. I will also give another way to sort of increase your deniability, and this is actually from someone who I won't say who it was, but she was someone who always wore a very specific makeup and outfit and wig for events. And when she actually had somebody who was vanilla in her house, came across a picture of her at an event and looked at it and went and looked at her friend and goes, "But is that you?" And the friend said, "Oh, no. That's a drag queen that I saw at a burlesque show once." And the person was like, "Oh, okay," and that was fine. And they totally did it. So by going over the top with the wig and with the thing, they actually had plausible deniability in that situation. So I mean that is I know other people that do that. Knothead wears a mask in all of his photos for a long time. Morpheus did that. Who runs the Morpheus's Bondage Extravaganza. So using a mask, you can't wear a mask in all situations like that, but you can wear a mask at all kink events. Nobody's going to blink twice. So,
right. I saw somebody at Ropecraft New Orleans mask the whole time.
Yeah. Hey, in New Orleans, it's New Orleans. Why wouldn't you wear a mask?
Right. You can go out and buy all kinds of gorgeous masks in New Orleans. They're selling them for Pete's sakes.
Come to think of it, I want a Lone Ranger mask for New Orleans. Naya, make that so.
Yes, sir.
So I am totally going to Ropecraft New Orleans and just like doing the Lone Ranger's theme around behind you wherever you go. That can be a thing. So yeah, the other thing you mentioned, the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation. It's great if you want to give them money. I'm a member. I've been a member for years. I give them membership fees annually. If nothing else, go read the blog. Follow the Twitter account.
And they have outlines for risk assessment and for recommendations for journalists, activists, people under oppressive regimes, and LGBTQ people as well. That's a good place. I send people that all the time because they have step by step. Here's what you do next.
Yeah, and I think they do a really good job. They have some really smart staff attorneys. So back when the courts were really getting into the border law thing, I actually was at a hacker conference in D.C. and I got to see one of their staff attorneys. She was one of their attorneys at the time. She's now in private practice, named Marcia Hoffman. She did a really great talk about Fourth Amendment border search and seizure, and the reality is you basically don't have any rights at the border.
Right.
You basically don't. And I felt really bad for her because she kept getting shouted at by the crowd because everybody was mad. How can they do this? Why is this the law? And of course, she's an EFF staff attorney. She's on our side.
Yeah.
But it was such a passionate topic. And there were people there who live within 50 miles of the border. So according to, I forget which circuit court it was, a decision, they could be searched whenever. They were within 50 miles.
Ooh, I didn't realize that was a... Wow.
I don't know if that's still a standing law. It was the law in about 2012 that within 50 miles, the border agents had that ability.
Well, and the thing is there could be an executive order tomorrow that increases that to 300 miles. I mean,
please don't give spray tan Caligula that idea.
Yeah.
But the EFF is out there fighting. The ACLU is out there fighting those kinds of things. They tend to team up a lot on the InfoSec and privacy kinds of issues. The ACLU does a lot of other good stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Have you read Violet Blue's Smart Girl's Guide to Privacy?
I have not. I've heard really good things about it from people that whose opinions I trust. So
yes, ditto.
I would certainly take a look at that. Realize that privacy and security is not a thing that you bolt on or a thing that you're like, oh, well, I encrypted my laptop once. I'm secure.
It's like consent.
There's going to be a lot of parallels like that.
There really are.
It's going to be an ongoing thing. It's a thing you have to engage in all the time, right? You found out that, hey, back in the day, the way that privacy mode was originally, incognito mode was originally programmed was actually really, really bad. And nobody looked until somebody with disk forensics as a background took a look at what the actual hard drive activity was and went, hey, look, all this data that you said went away when the browser closed, it's still sitting on the hard drive, available to me. Maybe we should change that. That's a problem. It's a problem all the time. And the way that computer programming and software work, you can actually introduce those problems even when you make an update. Like, okay, the original version didn't have this problem. I made an update. I didn't realize I commented out something that was kind of important. And all of a sudden I made a problem. So understand that that's a risk that you take, and that's a risk you take all the time anyway. Congratulations, you didn't know it, but it's a problem all the time. But just be aware that, just because this was secure, computer scientists get really picky, security researchers get very, very picky about the details of exactly what version on exactly what platform with exactly what hardware, because all of that ends up mattering in the end result.
Right. I was reading, what is her name? Taylor Swift on security, or Taylor on security?
Ah, yeah. Swift on security.
Yeah, Swift on security. So she was saying that she had received a virus, a malware file to examine, ran her current virus detection software, didn't detect it, updated the software, and then immediately detected it. And so it's always, you always need to make sure it's the most updated version, because there's always someone going out to try and make it, get past it.
Absolutely. And so like Tor is a great example of that. The Tor developers watch what the FBI does, because the FBI spends a lot of money to break into Tor. Mostly for what we would all consider really good reasons, going after child exploitation people. But the fact is, the Tor developers understand that a tool that today is used to do something that we all agree is probably a good thing is a tool that tomorrow could be used to unmask everybody using Tor. So, and that's sort of where you've realized, right, we under a previous administration, we built the most powerful surveillance apparatus that has ever existed and is kind of terrifying. And now we've given it to someone that most of us don't trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so yeah, the Tor devs are always watching that kind of thing. They're always reading academic research, but so are the bad guys. So realize that, it's very much an arms race in some ways. So even if today's version is secure, Tor does a really great job of telling you, like, hey, you need to update your Tor browser bundle. Not all software does that. VPN software, right? Good luck finding out if your VPN client needs to be updated. Also, the downside of that, I use a commercial company, again, based in Finland called F-Secure. A lot of the sort of shadier companies, hey, great, they don't keep records. They also don't tell you if they get hacked, if they lose your data. If the admin quits and steals the credit card database, I won't tell you any of that either. So that's kind of an interesting challenge.
Wow. I hadn't even thought about that particular thing.
Oh, there's a ton of terrifying research on VPN endpoints leaking all kinds of data and doing really bad stuff. Sorry. Welcome to the party.
Yeah, no kidding.
Or to quote the Matrix, why, oh, why didn't I take the blue pill?
Yes. All right. Well, we are approaching 2 hours of talking about this, so we're going to bring it to a close here. Thank you for those solid things that we can do to increase security. And I'm going to say here, unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to invite people who are sitting there frothing at the mouth, wanting to tell us all the things that we got wrong or that we overestimated or underestimated or whatever. I'm going to suggest that they send me the email, and I will filter through them and ask you follow-up questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you for being my human firewall. And
yeah, absolutely. My email is greatanswer@protonmail.com. By all means, send me comments, questions. Some people have already done this. I have sent out a newsletter where I talked a little bit about my concerns for security, and I had some people email me some of their own experiences, which and things they knew about, which I appreciate a lot. It's an ongoing difficulty, and a case where I think on this, it used to be we like, oh, well, we're worried about hackers because of identity theft and things like that. And suddenly, as a Kinkster, it feels like we've suddenly gotten a lot. It's like a battle on multiple fronts now. It's like, yeah, we have to worry about identity theft. We have to worry about blackmail, but we also have to worry about what the government might be doing with the information. And maybe we should have been worrying about that the whole time, but for some reason it seems to have gotten a lot more concerning.
Yeah, again, power and knowledge are, they're just tools. How you use them determines whether they're moral or not. And certainly, nobody is against going against or going after people who want to, kill people or people who want to exploit children. The problem becomes that power can become very dangerous if we give you unlimited ability to do it. In the hacker community, especially now, there's a realization we might be ready. We thought the crypto wars were over. We thought we won in the 90s. We might see a whole new round of the crypto wars. And that's a really scary thing, too. Unfortunately, the genie is out of the bottle on that one for the government. It's really hard to put that one away. So they might not win, but what they might start doing is requiring any public company, any company that has a headquarters and people that can be arrested, have to give them a backdoor key.
Looking at that and the ability of them to, or just say that, hey, you can have this, but if you use it, we're going to regard that as a crime. And one of the things, realistic things about law enforcement is that there's so many laws on the books that they can always find something that they can.
Yeah, have you read one of the things hackers love to talk about is a book called 3 Felonies a Day?
Oh, I've heard about it, though.
Really interesting book. I think the author's a Harvard law professor, somewhere a law professor. And basically, he kind of breaks down, like, so you talked about the FBI using things to blackmail you. One of the things they will do is they will find a felony you're committing that you didn't know about. Mm-hmm. And show up at your door and go, hi, we have this felony and we have a warrant for your arrest. And, the maximum penalty for this felony is 10 years in jail and $250,000 fine. Or you could wear a wire for us.
Right. Yeah.
Which one of these do you want? I
would also recommend that people read the books because a little more lighthearted, scary, but lighthearted. There's a book by Barry Eisler that came out called God's Eye. Which is, having listened to the Snowden thing, it's a remarkably plausible and also kind of a fun read because they use tales and things like that in that. And also the book Little Brother by Cory Doctorow is a really interesting hypothetical how to fight a nation state. If it becomes a way. The idea is that San Francisco gets under martial law.
I haven't read that particular Cory Doctorow book.
It's good. It's good.
Cory's a really smart person, understands a lot of the technology and the implications pretty well. So, if Cory says it's possible and it's doable, I would not disagree with him without a lot of evidence on my side.
Yeah. Well, it's also a book that he wrote a long time ago or so many years ago, so it's possible that it needs an update or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think even the EFF, some of the stuff you talk about, if you go to the webpage, the EFF will actually tell you, like, hey, we did this in 2014. It's the best we've got today, but we're working on an update.
Yeah. If you look online, you're like, oh, I found a way to beat facial recognition with little IR infrared LEDs. You might want to do a little more deeper research and discover that, no, they actually don't work as well as you think.
Thankfully, this is my day job, so I get paid to do some of this. This is also my passion. So, there have been months in my life where literally I was always either at a kink event or a hacker event. And I'd be like, I spent the entire month of May traveling. Maybe I should just take June and actually stay home and, do things like buy groceries and laundry. My problem with this is not too much problem, is that I have spent hours and hours and hours trying to find ways to make things more secure. And not more than a little amount of money. And I have ended up at a point where basically I want to sit in a corner under a blanket and never go out the door again because there's just so much out there that can get through. So it's not a comforting thing, and it's something that I think my fear is that people are not going to take it seriously enough, and then that next executive order that people with green cards got really taken by surprise, and that at some point the Kinksters will find that same situation. It's possible. I think there's a lot of crossover between sort of computer geeks and Kinksters. Hopefully there'll be a couple people in the kink community. The hackers have been fighting some of these fights for a long time. What do you think about the idea, the crypto party? Seems to be a way that people cryptoparty.in is the website, and it's basically a place where people can sit there and do what we just did, sit there and talk about various vulnerabilities, how to make things more secure, and it's very much focused on the idea of making it accessible to the lowest common denominator. I mean, one of the things they say is have it explain it to a 10-year-old, and then have the 10-year-old explain it to an 80-year-old. And then you'll know that you're at the right, level of explaining. And I think, honestly, Rigger J started doing these at Grooves. And we're likely going to have him present at a future event because I think it's important. But I was thinking that there could certainly be a sort of a crypto kink party, where it's not just crypto, but it's specifically
like you say, it's the idea of privacy where we have, increasing your ability to misrepresent yourself, which sounds weird when I say it like that, but damn it, that's what privacy is. So do you think that would be something that would be useful at events? Kind of like a meetup kind of thing? Full
disclosure, I don't really teach any kink classes. I don't think I have anything to add there. Certainly at Ramble Brew, actually Jay and I both. So there now, if if you were at the ins and outs of privacy on the second day of Ramble Brew, you now know what I look like. Congratulations.
And a fine looking fellow you are.
Oh, thank you. That was not an attempt to fish for a compliment, but an acknowledgement that I'm, risking a little OPSEC there. So we had some attendees. There was some interest in it. My thought for, what could I add to the kink community would be this stuff, although the fact that we're at 2+ hours and I'm still energized to talk should tell you something.
Yeah.
Which is you need to give Joe very specific questions that he can answer.
We'll edit all this in post.
Oh, good. So I can talk about this stuff at length. I used to joke. I used to work in the Department of Defense, which is why I know some of their terms. And when I worked with junior enlisted military, who would be like, hey, go learn from Joe how to do what Joe does. It was not uncommon to watch those kids go from like attentive and interested to, oh my God, please someone just shut him up.
So we need to make it fun parties where everybody's dressed up in leather, and if you answer a question right, somebody gets, beaten or something.
There's candy or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Some risk reward kind of thing,
So I'm absolutely open to the idea of a crypto party. I think it'd be a really neat idea. I'm willing to take my creds against anybody out there who wants to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Absolutely. I think crypto parties at kink events at GRUs would be a great idea. Certainly, right. They're welcome to email you, or if they tweet at you, you can direct them to my Twitter, which I don't open because, again, OPSEC. I believe the Library of Congress still records all public tweets. The joke is they're mining it for signs of intelligent life, and they still haven't found any.
Well, there's also the fact, and here's the big thing, is that, I've been talking about the risks that I have as a cishet presenting white male, middle-aged guy, relatively well-educated, which is a very different risk profile than a lot of other people and underrepresented, people. So what I would especially invite people to do is email me and say, hey, you didn't even talk about this particular risk that you didn't even think about. Because I'm sure there's lots of them that I didn't think about. And trying to find out better ways to mitigate that for, to say, underrepresented minorities of various types in parts of the culture.
Absolutely. Great example. A lot of security researchers do a lot of work on Grindr, which I'm sure everybody who listens to this podcast has at least heard of Grindr. Grindr security is awful. And it's actually been suggested by other researchers at events that if you are in a regime where homosexuality is a sin, you shouldn't use Grindr or you are risking your life.
Wow.
So, something to think about, like that is kind of the de facto hookup app, right? Like you'll use Grindr or Recon. One of those has a really, really awful security model, and to the best of my knowledge, it has not been fixed. And, if you're in Iran and you're using Grindr, you're risking your life. So, something to think about. And again, I'm in the cis hetero-looking white guy category too, right? If Spray Tan Caligula, the Cheeto in Chief, whatever you want to call him, President Baby Hands, starts rounding people up, we're not going to be in the first couple groups.
Right. So we should definitely make some room to listen to the people with the concerns that will be in the first few groups.
Absolutely. And try to solve those problems, work ardently on their behalf.
Right.
In whatever way they ask us to do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm sure we will come back to other things with other class questions.
Sure, and I apologize to the Bookcast listeners who just went through 2 hours of this.
That's the beautiful thing about podcasts is that they could turn it off. It's consent.
Or they can use it as an excellent non-medicinal sleep aid.
I hate to tell you this. This would not be the first time. I have had people email me and say, yes, I listen to your podcast every night. It puts me right to sleep. Literally, I've had that compliment paid to me. So, whatever works. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to thank Johnny Tornado and for all of his time that he spent, and also Rigger J and Penderbound for their additional support, and Panina for holding my hand as I'm dipping my toe further into this particular situation. If you have comments or questions about things, please feel free to contact me, greatanswer@protonmail.com. I'm also Great Answer on Twitter and Great Answer on FetLife, if you'd rather hear about things there. The entire episode, as I said, is available on patreon.com/greatanswer. You can go in there. And huge thanks to my sponsor, Twisted Monk, for making this podcast possible, and all of my patrons at patreon.com. I owe them some smut, and I'm planning on getting that taken care of. You have been listening to the Kink, Sex, and Culture podcast by Great Answer, available on iTunes, Libsyn, and other fine podcast broadcasters, wherever you may go. You can always go to greatanswer.com/tags/podcast for the latest episode, and I hope to hear from you soon, doing our part to keep up the resistance.